Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Okay guys, so on this week's episode of Bible Time with Allicia Time, we're going to be continuing the story of Joshua. So as you remember from last week's episode, basically Moses has passed away and Joshua's the new leader now. And so now they sent some spies in to basically see if the Lord has delivered the promised land to them. And he has, because most of the people are basically, they're afraid. They're kind of ready to give up their land. So now the Israelites are going to march into the promised land. And we'll get into that right now. So let's go ahead and start. Alright, so this is where we left last week, where basically they built like an altar to remind their descendants that the Lord has, delivered the promised land to them. So now we're down here. My spies saw it with their own eyes. The river flowed back into place as soon as they came out of the water, as you remember from last week when they crossed the Jordan River. The Hebrew God has powerful magic. We have never seen or heard of such a thing. So God still had one more thing to do to prepare the Israelites to take the promised land. Have knives made of flint. These men born in the wilderness have not been circumcised. We must obey God. We must obey God's covenant. Then the people of Israel celebrated their first Passover in the new land, and the manna from heaven stopped because the people could eat from the land. And as Joshua and the army began to move towards Jericho, God had one more message. Are you for us or for our enemies? What message does my Lord have for his servant? Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy. So, if you remember, this is kind of what God said to Moses when he talked through the burning bush. So, the city of Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites. The city itself seemed impenetrable. It had two walls. The outer wall was 6 feet thick and the inner wall was 12 feet thick. Plus, the city was on a hill, so attackers would be at severe disadvantage. But God gave his general his marching orders. See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. God gave clear instructions. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. Joshua gave them an additional command. Do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voices. Do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. On the seventh day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. So watch what God's going to do right here. So on the 7th day, the Israelites got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times. The 7th time around, Joshua gave the order. Shout, for this Lord has given you the city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. So, archaeological note, when the city of Jericho was evacuated or excavated by garrisons, they found walls had fallen outward, not inward, as would have happened with an invading army pushing in. Literally, God knocked down the walls, as you see, with the sound of the shouts and the trumpets. So they didn't really even have to, go to war, if that makes sense. Because he delivered. What I mean by that, they didn't have to push through. God himself pushed down the walls of Jericho, and the Israelite army rushed in. And as instructed by God, Joshua put the entire city to the sword. And to fulfill their pledge, Joshua had Rahab and her family brought out to safety because she had feared God and helped hide the spies. Note, Rahab married a Jewish man named Solomon and became the great-great-grandmother of King David, and as such became one of the forebearers of Jesus Christ and his identity with all mankind. So that's pretty interesting right there. So the next nearby city was a small city named I'm just going to say A. Joshua sent about 3,000 men, but the result was much different than expected. The men of A came out in force and ruled the Israelites, killing 36 of them. The heart of the people melted, and Joshua fell face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord. The leaders mourned as well. "Stand up, what are you doing on your face? Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant which I command them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy what has been given to destruction. You cannot stand against your enemies until you remove it." So let's see what he has to remove. Alright, so early the next morning, Joshua followed God's instructions and had the Israelites come forward, tribe by tribe. Then clan by clan, the family by family, then man by man, until a man named Achan was chosen. "My son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and give him praise. Tell me what you have done. Do not hide it from me. It is true I have sinned against the Lord. When I saw in the plunder a beautiful robe from Babylonia, 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold, I coveted them and took them." Messengers ran to the tent and brought back the items and set them before Joshua. Joshua and the Israelites took Achan and his entire family, his possessions and the stolen items, and took them to the valley of Achor, aka the Valley of Trouble. Then they stoned Achan and then his family. He and all that he had was burned. The Israelites heaped a pile of rocks over the charred bodies and left the Valley of Trouble, having dealt with the disobedience in their camp. So that's kind of sad, but it was his choice to sin. This time, God gave Joshua a different battle plan. Some of the men behind the city, while the others camped. Some of the men hid behind the city, while the others camped in the valley in front of the city. Joshua chose 30,000 of his best fighting men and marched out at night. The next morning, the king of A sent out all his fighting men, leaving none in the city. "Defeat them just as before. Teach these renegade Hebrew slaves such a lesson that they will flee back to Egypt and never return." The Israelites began fleeing, just like in the previous battle of Allicia. "Look, they're running just as before. Quick, pursue them and put them all to the sword." But after the fighting men of Valley rushed out to pursue the Israelite army, the soldiers hiding in the city in ambush rushed into the city. So that was very, very smart. The Hebrews turned around and the soldiers of A were totally defeated before them. "We're trapped. Turn and attack." The Israelites put the rest of this city to the sword, but kept the animals and plunder as God said they could. The city was burned to the ground. The king was hung and his body piled over with rocks and at the front of the city. Then Joshua led the people to pause and worship. On Mount Ebal, he built an altar of uncut stones, just as described in the law of Moses. This was a reminder that worship was to be simple, without emphasizing human showmanship. There Joshua read all the words of the law, the blessings and the curses, just as it was written in the book of law. So now we're gonna go ahead and pause it right here for this week. So as you see, they managed to get through to Jericho, and then they had an issue where one of their men unfortunately sinned and suffered the consequences for it. So so that's basically it. So next week we will basically continue the story of Joshua, and this is actually a very interesting story. It's one of my favorites. So anyway, so thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below if you have any Pacific Bible stories you would like me to read to you. I'd be more than happy to, so let me know. And yeah, so have a good day. May God bless you, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!